Welcome, everyone. Before we begin tonight's program, I would like to first familiarize you with the Zoom platform, and I'll just introduce myself. My name is Kirsten Olson. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the workshop coordinator here at Minnesota Center for Book Arts. In the lower left corner of your screen, you will see a microphone and camera icon. These icons are used as toggle buttons to turn on and off your camera and microphone. Because of the larger attendance at tonight's event, we ask that you remain muted with your cameras turned off during the program. If you look to the upper right corner of your screen, you will see text that either says speaker view or gallery view. This is also a toggle button to allow you to change your view. Gallery view will present each presenter in equal-sized windows. Switching to speaker view will show the person speaking in a larger window with other participants off to the side in smaller windows. To submit a question or report a technical issue, click on the chat icon that looks like a thought bubble at the bottom center of your screen. Clicking on this button will display a sidebar window that will allow you to view and send chat messages. We're also exploring a new feature for our events, closed captioning. You can turn on or off closed captions by clicking on the CC icon on the lower right of the window. Please let us know what you think. We're recording tonight's event, and the recording will be available on our YouTube channel in the next few days. We will begin the program with an introduction from Annika Schneider, the Director of Exhibitions and Artist Programs at MCBA. Then each of our artists will present and discuss their work. We will conclude the program with a Q&A session, so be sure to add your questions into the chat. Without further delay, I'm happy to introduce Annika Schneider, Director of Exhibitions and Artist Programs. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Again, my name is Annika Schneider, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Exhibitions and Artist Programs at Minnesota Center for Book Arts. MCBA celebrates the book as a vibrant contemporary art form that takes many shapes, from the traditional crafts of papermaking, letterpress printing, and hand bookbinding to experimental art making and self-publishing techniques. MCBA supports the limitless creative evolution of book arts through book arts workshops, programming for adults, youth, families, and teachers. MCBA is located in the Open Book Building in downtown Minneapolis, alongside partner organizations, the Loft Literary Center and Milkweed Editions. Since 1985, the Jerome Foundation has helped artists push the boundaries of contemporary book arts by supporting the creation of new book works. This is our 8th mentorship series for early career artists. The mentorship is for generative artists without a prior background in book arts. It runs on alternate years with our Jerome Residency series for early career artists with experience in book arts. Our mentees this year are D'Angelo Christian, Suriya Khuth, and Leah Klister. We will hear a 15-minute talk from each of them, followed by a Q&A with all 3 of our mentees. If you would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat or direct message it to me. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce D'Angelo Christian, who is a photographer who focuses on day-to-day scenes, acknowledgements of love, and gestures contained within families, loved ones, and the natural world. Collecting and preserving his personal history and giving agency to his identity is what motivates his work.
All right. Hello, my name is D'Angelo. I'm a photographer. I enjoy taking pictures, and I also teach photography at St. Olaf College and also at the University of Minnesota. So I'm going to walk you all through photographs that I've taken and that mean a lot to me. And then I'll talk a little about what I plan to do at the end of the fellowship as well. So I'm just going to start with photographs that I learned like photography with. So I started taking pictures when I was 17, just randomly. When I was in high school, they had a darkroom class. And so what I would do is I would just hang out with my friends, and we would just like skate around all day. And so in this picture right here is Felix and Anthony. And Felix, like I really appreciate this picture because of just his long straw that he has, and Anthony scratching the scratcher right there. And then this is Felix again. And so Anthony in this picture was somebody who I grew up skateboarding with. And Felix was his girlfriend's son. And so, but Anthony was always like also into graffiti. So while like him and his friend were doing graffiti, me and Felix would just sit down and hang around like talking. And like in my photography, I really appreciate like ordinary, just subtle moments in time, and just also appreciate just spending time with people. Like the way I see photography is like a map, you know, of all the interactions and meaningful, like a reference point just for meaningful people in my life. And so that's just Felix just sitting down, you know, eating Funyuns. And the same day, like before I met Felix and Anthony, I ended up like, I had like bought the exact same Funyuns in Arizona, and then Felix ended up like getting the same thing exactly. So, and then also like just the state. So these photographs, these beginning photographs are mostly taken in Long Beach, California, where I was raised. And so this is Chewy. This is also somebody that I grew up in high school skateboarding with. So after I skateboarded, I would see Chewy walking around, you know, taking his little sister to school. And Chewy is somebody who's like very, like, he's just like a good person. He just is always like smiling. And at this time, I do believe that Chewy was like just like in between homes, you know, just going around on the metro. But I appreciate like this little smiley face, like at the bottom portion of his backpack, and just the way the light was. And so this is again my friend Anthony. This is downtown in near the pier in Long Beach, and this is just us going to play like the arcade, that arcade down there that in Long Beach. Let me see. This is my friend Chamnon with the Long Beach versus Everybody's hat. You know, people in Long Beach are really proud to be from Long Beach. And so this is my friend Ivan, who I started taking pictures with when I was in high school. He was in the advanced class, and he really taught me a lot, like about picture making. And his brother had like a big collection of like films, like in his room. And I appreciate the light in that photograph. And so all those photographs were taken probably when I was around 22, 23. And then so during my undergraduate career, I went to Cal Arts, and for my senior like exhibition, I made like these, I would make books that corresponded to everybody that I showed you, and I'll write like poetry with the like photographs. And for the show, instead of like laying the book out, like I laid the book out flat on the wall so you can see all the blank pages along with the images and writing as well. And then on the right side, those images correspond like with the images on the left. So that's basically how I started taking pictures, and that's how I learned to take pictures. I learned how to take pictures from the people in these photographs. They really taught me a lot about empathy, like care, like love, and just really appreciating photography for what it is, you know, capturing light and trying to find that light within people that I feel some connection with. So now I'm going to start. So when I was in graduate school, I was able to get like a fellowship, an English traveling fellowship. So what that allowed me to do was give me money to support a month of travel from Long Beach, California to Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. And so what the purpose of this kind of 30 months like road trip was to visit my brother, who is incarcerated and was incarcerated at the time. And so at the time he was in Susanville, California, which is like right below the Oregon border. So I'm originally from Long Beach, California, and my brother was like 10 hours away. So I could never see him just because he was so far. And so like I really just started taking pictures, and also since I was in graduate school, I was in New Haven. I didn't have access to the people in my life anymore. So I really started becoming interested in land, but also land that I always had access to, but I never could see. Because just growing up in Long Beach, I really was centered around like that group of people in my life, and I never really like knew what nature was in a way, you know. So, but also thinking about like what I have access to and what doesn't my brother have access to, because in Susanville up there, it's like really like beautiful, you know, it's surrounded by like all this like great nature, and kind of figuring out how can I have a conversation with land myself and my brother as well. So just like going, through Joshua Tree. This is right above Susanville in Alturas. Just driving around. Like this is in Nevada. And this is in Idaho, in the Sawtooth Mountains. And again, looking at my shadow, thinking about time as well. And these were shot using a large format camera. This one's in Montana, just paying attention to light as well. And so as I go from like that landscape, I'm also thinking about home. So for me, photography is like a diary, like a journal, and again, like a map. So I'm trying to find presence within absence. So this is my brother's Bible. So this is my brother's Bible. So this is a Bible that he would always carry with him when he was in and out of carceral systems. And this is a Bible that his grandmother gave to him. And that's a portrait of him on the cover, that of him when he was a child that's been there. And then going again, so that's my mother sewing in the back room of her house. This is my brother, and this is actually the first time that I saw him. So growing up, my brother was very skinny, but he always loved like sports and like athleticism and football. But so this is really the first time I saw my brother transform, just like in his like body. So it was very jarring for me to see just my brother like so transformed, and not, again, like not being able to see somebody, but trying to find meaning out of that as well. And so this is my brother in the back room during one of the times that he was released. And this is one of my favorite pictures of him, just because of the light. Like right before this photograph, he was telling me that you can take my photograph. Like he asked me to take his photograph, and that meant a lot to me because sometimes I can always take pictures and he'll be like, no, he doesn't want his picture taken. And just him leaving and the light from him. And just like, again, I'm really interested in nuance and ordinary things because those things to me mean a lot. And so again, going to Susanville, California, this is picture was taken like right outside of the hotel the day after I visited my brother. So I visited him 2 days in a row, and I just really appreciated the light. And again, thinking about light in relation to my brother, like in relation to the camera, in relationship to the life meaning that, it has for me personally. And I just really felt this photograph when I took it. And so again, like finding presence in absence. So in those previous pictures, I was looking more at like landscape, but these are focused on home. So this is an altar that my mom made in her bedroom. And this is my brother, me, and her. And I really appreciate just finding things that already exist and like photographing them, and also like considering this a portrait of my mother as well. And this is my brother petting our dog Roger on the bed. And again, I really appreciate like subtlety. I feel like sometimes, people, in carceral systems don't really have room to breathe, like what that means to me is like I allow my brother the space to, in my photographs, just to be himself and pet my dog Roger on my childhood bed in Long Beach. And then again, looking at my shadow, looking how I fit into the space of home as well. And then this is another picture of my mom and Roger, really focused on tenderness and softness, really being patient with the camera. And this is my mom when she dropped me off to New Haven to go to graduate school after leaving Long Beach for the first time. So, and so at the, so this photograph I took at the end of that road trip, at the 30-day road trip. So before I left, me and then my partner at the time bought my mom a rose for her birthday. And then when we came back, my mom had cut the stem and put it, you know, in this like candle holder. And I really appreciate that my mom really, that meant something to her. So, and then these are the last set of photographs that I'm gonna show. These are, so I'm really interested in like personal connection, land, home, and place as well. And these photographs were taken in Birmingham in Alabama. So that's where I was born originally. And so that's me. I'm in this like picture frame over here. And this is my grandmother's collection of photographs. I also really appreciate how photographs exist in the world and what they mean to people, you know, especially outside of institutions. So I went here, I started this project with another grant that I had received when I was at Cal Arts. And so I was 23 at the time. And my father, who was 23 when he passed away, so I felt like that was like a good time for me to kind of explore a place like I didn't know too well because I was raised in Long Beach. Again, like starting to like make my own archive, my own family tree. So this is my family right here. So this person right here is my brother, D'Angelo. That's Angelo, who we both were named after. That's Ephraim, who you'll see in the later photographs, who really showed me around and told me about my father. That's my grandmother, Alma, and that's my aunt, Ula. And this is just somebody who wanted to be part of the image or photograph. So this is my brother, D'Angelo. I just appreciate this photograph just because of like looking at homes out there in the South and how religious, like, and very like spiritual they are, you know, and also like just things that happen to fall into place naturally really means a lot to me as a photographer. So my brother's shirt is saying brotherly love, you know, and all these like angelic figures and family and peace in the background. And also just my brother's presence, just smiling in the picture. That's my uncle, my great uncle, James. That's my auntie Faye, who's one of the nicest people I've encountered in my life. And that's my grandfather, Willie, who's very like smooth, like very like quick talker. He dresses really nice, but he's also a very kind person as well. And so again, going back to like, you know, taking pictures of people, learning how I'm starting to form my own like archive, like of my own memory, but also like visiting like my father's like burial site, the cemetery where he was buried in Alabama, Birmingham, especially is very segregated, even in death. So this cemetery was really not kept well, you know, compared to white like cemeteries like out there. So when I was walking through here, I was seeing like, you know, like mounds of dirt on top of like people's tombstones. Like it was very like not kept well. There's like no directory. This is just me and my brother just looking through all of these tombstones, just trying to find our dad's tombstone. And so this is my dad's tombstone. And even within this one, both his death dates and his birth dates are wrong, both in the year and month, you know? So just also thinking about how people are cared for like after they're no longer present here on earth, but also thinking about the people who still carry people while they are here on earth, and how do I learn about who somebody is through them as well. And so these next pictures are actually photographs that my uncle Ephraim, he showed me around and told me some history between him and my father as well. So this used to be my dad's childhood home, but they tore all the homes in the area out to make way like for an airport that was never made. So now it's just a park. And the reason that my uncle knows this is his childhood home is because of this telephone pole. So this is a river down in Birmingham where my dad used to play in as a child. And this is a railroad crossing that my dad, like a train hit my dad when he was like a teenager, but he survived. And at that time, like in the 80s, there were no like railroad crossings or track, like no indications that there was that was like a railroad track besides like the tracks right there. And then there used to be like bushes covering the tracks so you couldn't see them. So again, thinking about like somebody surviving something like that intense, but also not really surviving something, you know, is so. And then this is the last like picture of my slideshow. So I went back there in Birmingham last year, and I took a lot of photographs of just family. And this is a self-portrait of me in that home. Again, like implicating myself, you know, in Birmingham and Alabama, but also implicating myself in the light of my grandmother's home. Because to me, that's what photography is all about. It's light, but also, you know, implicating myself within a certain kind of history in Birmingham that I wasn't able to be a part of due to the absence of my father, due to him not being alive anymore. So what I want to do for like what I'm doing at the Book Art Center is I want to make like a wood box of photographs that contain like my own like family tree, that contains love, that contains light. And those can be like portraits of people. Those can be like still lives, you know, like my mother's altar. But that can also be like just figuring out how photographs can talk to each other, you know, and figuring out my own idea of what family and what my own idea of presence is. And but also like thinking about like different ways of like printing the same image, like maybe through Van Dyke Brown or cyanotypes or, you know, silver gelatin prints, and figuring out how even like the process of photography and like that kind of repetition can inform each other. All right, so I think that is it for my presentation. So thank you. I'm gonna get out this screen share.
Thank you so much, D'Angelo. That was
Thank
a really nice journey through your work. So thank you. So next up, I would like to introduce Suriya Khuth, who is a trans Khmer artist that uses photography and collage as fragmented languages to articulate and reflect on queerness, memory, fluidity, and transformation.
Oops, okay. Oh my goodness, okay. Hi everyone, thank you Annika for the introduction. Yeah, and D'Angelo for sharing more about, yeah, your beautiful photographs. Before beginning, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone at MCBA for, yeah, creating such like an inviting space for myself and my cohort members to like step into the art of bookmaking and allowing that to reshape our practices. Thank you to the Jerome Foundation for making this mentorship possible. And everyone here today to hear us speak a little bit about how our projects are unfolding. But yeah, as Annika mentioned, my name is Suriya Khuth. I use they, them, she, her pronouns. I am from Rochester, Minnesota, but I am working and living in the Twin Cities, and I am an independent curator and artist. So my practice, as Annika mentioned, utilizes photography and collage as these languages to talk and speak to queerness, and in particular transness as this very like fluid, messy, endless process of becoming. My practice is very curative and intuitive as I'm like collecting images from like various sources. So family archives, old projects I've done, in order to like, again, piece together these collages that can speak to the themes that I'm interested in. But before getting into like the projects I've done, I wanted to speak a bit about the things that have informed like the basis of my practice. I would say that engaging with family archives early on in my practice kind of, again, formed like the blueprint for how, sorry, I formed the blueprint for how I look at, speak to, and work from images. I'd done a lot of work in undergrad. So I went to McAllister, where I had done research about like refugee camp photography and how photography circulated among the Thai-Cambodian border within the aftermath of the Cambodian genocide. And so this is a photograph of my yay, my grandmother, and my mom. And so in doing this work, was able to like interview folks in my family and learn more, I guess, about my origins in a way. And so the kind of content and stories that I learned behind these images informs and continues to inform like the themes that interest me. So themes related to memory and remembering, lineage, and really opened up a space for me to begin to question how do I situate myself and my experiences within these histories. I also think that the act of engaging with physical family archives and photo albums was a slow exercise in allowing me to, you know, look at photographs critically. And it's through this process that I was able to like really observe like the physicality of photographs and how people live with photos in their everyday lives. And so was thinking about, you know, how they're arranged in photo albums, was thinking about like the folds on them, how people would cut them, how people would scribble in messages on the back, and how these like physical aspects of these photographs, so the acts of mark making on them kind of influence like how I and other people like ascribe meaning to these images. And so my practice is really interested in processes of like searching and returning to and reprinting and reconstructing images as, again, a way to kind of leave behind my own reflections and understandings about queerness, and again, that process of becoming. And so I thought it'd be nice to like lead into projects I've done that have informed or have helped me inform the language of the work I do. And so one of the most like formative projects I'd done in undergrad was create this magazine with an amazing team of artists to pull together the works and practices of artists within the Khmer diaspora. So artists based in Cambodia, but also throughout the US. And was really interested in seeing like what would happen if I brought these artists across distances and different cultures into a tangible object. And for me, like, it was really important to create a tangible object because, you know, aspects of Khmer culture had undergone this erasure under the genocide. And so I was interested in creating something that could kind of stand against that attempted erasure. And this was also my very first attempts at curating and bookmaking. And this cover was actually my very first collage. And so, I don't know, it holds a special place in my heart. And I think that like collage within this work like allowed me again to pull from these like different generations within my family. And within this work, I was able to like make diptychs of my family. So this is my thaw, and then a photograph of him in a refugee camp in the Philippines. And I did these with my grandfather and my yay, my mom and my dad. And then also within this project was able to like interview Pramsadan Auk, who founded like one of Cambodia's like first like all queer dance troupes. And you'll see like within these like earlier works, I have, I think, a more like traditional approach to photography. And I think that over time, I started to get kind of like, I don't know, like kind of frustrated a bit. And I think that collaging like photographs allowed me to like work with photography in a way that felt more hands-on. But yeah, I'm really grateful to have been able to do this interview because I think it like really showed me the power of like image making and queer image making as a means to like document things that my community are experiencing and doing. And then shortly after I graduated, I was approached by Mars Varone and Tabitha Payne, who were two students at Brown at the time, and they were making this documentary that was exploring the experiences of trans Khmer men during the genocide and how they found community and survived in women's labor camps. And so this was my first attempt at making like movie posters. And I'm really grateful to have been a part of this project because it allowed me to honor the work that Tabitha and Mars had done, but also honor trans folks within my community. And it was just this reminder that like queerness can survive no matter what circumstances it finds itself in. And doing this work, I was able to really like develop a language again for collage and just kind of experiment because this was kind of my first attempts at it after graduating. And I think this is the first work where I'm like removing limbs from photographs and kind of piecing together this like kind of being or entity. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to be a part of an exhibition entitled Weaving Fragments at the Form and Content Gallery as a part of my residency with Public Functionaries Studio 400 program. And so this particular work was inspired by these like giant tableau paintings that are in a lot of Khmer households, at least within the US. And they're usually like tableaus of like monuments or religious texts or like dancers. And so I was kind of inspired by like the grandness of these tableaus, but was also thinking about like the absence of seeing like queer folks represented within these like grand tableaus. And so I was interested in, you know, piecing together the interiors of like spaces from photographs and adornments. And, you know, there's a lot of like sarong textiles, which are like worn by a lot of like women in moments of rest. And then piecing again, all these elements together to create these like deities, these like shape-shifting deities that I find worth honoring. And this like work was kind of an attempt to like normalize the presence of gender fluid folks within like a Khmer household. And this kind of leads me to the work that I'll be expanding upon during my time at MCBA, entitled To the Body You Left Behind, the Body I Step Into. And so MCBA, the mentorship, kind of arrived at this time where I had this like lingering interest in making my work more tactile, but I was also in a moment where like I'm beginning the process of transitioning. And so I was really excited to see like how I could continue growing this work through these new lenses. And so this work is inspired by this myth I heard growing up that I am a reincarnate of my great grandfather, because he actually died an exact year before I was born. And so growing up, like on my birthday, we'd visit his gravesite, and you know, some family members like had dreams about, you know, the reincarnation of a child. And so this was just something I grew up hearing a lot. And I think that, you know, in this work, I'm not necessarily interested in the plausibility of being a reincarnate, but I'm interested in the story because it imagines the body as this vessel of many selves. It imagines the body as something that's able to transform in these impossible ways. And I think that's something that like parallels a lot of my experience as I'm like stepping into transness. And so I'd done like iterations of this work, like again, in undergrad and after graduating, and I thought I was kind of done. And returning to the work, like there's still like energy there for me. And there's still like, I think, things I'm interested in exploring, again, as I'm transitioning. And so I thought this mentorship would be a good way to do so. And so again, you're seeing a lot of like me using handwriting and folding and taping. So things that I've seen in like family albums as like these ways of leaving behind, like, again, my own articulations and understandings of like queer identity and experience. And so, yeah, I'm not sure how things will take shape in the exhibition, but I know I'm interested in the question of like, what does a book form look like when it's speaking to a story that is not linear, that is very messy and not legible at all times. And I think that's interesting because like the book is like supposed to be this like compact, coherent, sequential object where you start in one page and then you finish and it's broken into chapters. And I'm really interested in how this like myth kind of challenges that book form. And I think as a collage artist, I'm like constantly pulling apart and repiecing things together from like different time periods and histories, like what that all can look like taking shape. And, you know, maybe it looks like a book that's on the edge of falling apart, or maybe it looks like a book that's taking shape on the spot. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm very excited. And I think on a general level, like I'm interested in making paper, which is this very like delicate medium, feel more sculptural. And again, like tactile, which I was kind of struggling with in earlier works. But yeah, thank you all very much for listening. And yeah, I hope to see you all at the exhibition this coming fall. Thank you. So now I have to.
Thank you, Suriya. That was wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. So finally, we will hear from Leah Klister. Leah has a BA in studio art from St. Olaf College and an MA in art education with a focus on social justice and community practice from NYU. Leah taught all types of media to grades 7 to 12 before leaving the classroom to take care of her daughters and focus on her art practice. Her current project is a relief printmaking series about the intimacies of motherhood. And also as a reminder, if you have had any questions or any questions come up, please put them in the chat for our Q&A period after Leah speaks. And now Leah.
Thank you, Annika. I'm just going to pull open my screen to share. All right, does everything look good? Gonna go with yes. All right.
I don't see your screen share actually, Leah.
Oh, that is because I didn't hit start screen sharing. All right.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Great.
All right. Exit. All right. let me see. How does that look? Does it look like it's in presentation mode, or do you see it?
It's not in presentation view.
My apologies.
Yeah, I think if you go to view underneath where you are right now, Leah,
Mm-hmm.
next to edit.
Thank you. Next to edit.
So not in the little window you're in.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Better.
Looks great. Yes.
Great. Thank you. All right. So thank you. I just want to start by saying thank you to MCBA for the community of artists, of teachers. Annika at MCBA, thank you so much for everything you've been doing for mentees and introducing us to everyone within the community. Thank you to the Jerome Foundation for funding this generous program, and to the other mentees. D'Angelo and Suriya, it's been wonderful getting to know you and hearing about your work, especially tonight. I want to start by telling you I currently live in Minneapolis. I live with my husband and 2 children, and I spend my days taking care of my almost 5-year-old and my 1.5-year-old. I grew up in eastern Wisconsin in a small town named Kaukauna, and I moved to Minnesota when I went to St. Olaf College for undergrad. After undergrad, I did my student teaching in Minnesota, and I stuck around. I got my first job and stayed there. I taught at Benilde St. Margaret's in St. Louis Park for 12 years. And 2 years into teaching at BSM, I took a year off to go to grad school. I went to grad school at NYU, where because I already had my teaching license, I didn't have to do the classroom requirement. And so I got a lot more studio time, and it was a really wonderful experience. While I was in grad school, my work explored family, home, and the loss of my mother. My mother passed away when I was a senior in college. And then I went to grad school about 5 years after she had passed away. And I was still processing a lot of what had happened, and just working through that grief. And so some of the pieces were reflecting on where she was, parallel to where I was. When she was 25, she had her first baby. When I was 25, I was going to grad school. And so looking for those similarities, looking for a relationship that I didn't get to build with her because as an adult, that I felt like I was missing. And a lot of the work that I was doing still was focused on painting at that time. I did a lot of painting up until grad school. And then that was when I was first introduced to screen printing. And I really loved it. It felt really fun and free. And I was taking a screen printing course simultaneously with a painting course at the time. And screen printing offered me a challenge that I hadn't been getting in painting, which was, it was forcing me to plan things out before I even started doing that. And those of you who have done screen printing or printmaking in general understand that piece of it, which is you kind of have to make your decisions about lines and marks and shapes and colors before you even get started, because once you get started with screen printing, every choice is made before you pull the ink onto the paper. And so the pieces that I was working on, these are also about home. This one, a drive to my aunt and uncle's house in through the farmland in eastern Wisconsin. And this image is an image of my family table growing up. My mom would make bread every morning excuse me, my mom would make bread every Saturday morning using a bowl that was her mother's and a spoon that was her mother's. And it just felt like a really big piece of my family life. And so exploring those pieces as well in this processing my grief. But I loved that printmaking was forcing me to sort of take things away, whereas painting was having me build up. And so it was a nice change of way to work. After I left grad school, I went back to the same school, back to my classroom, but I was bringing a lot more ideas of how to integrate printmaking into my classroom. And screen printing is a little harder to introduce to younger kids or even older kids. It just requires a lot more prep work. And so I instead decided to use relief printmaking because it's much more immediate and a little bit more accessible, especially for younger kids. And so here I am working on those. And as I brought in relief printmaking into my regular curriculum, I found that I wanted to learn more about it too. So I took classes at MCAD and I took a class or two at High Point, and then brought my students to High Point for field trips there. And it was something that I switched then more from painting into printmaking into my personal practice. And so here are some examples of pieces that I was working on at the time, just experimenting with reductive work and pulling away color and experimenting with wood, because I mostly used rubber blocks with my students because they're easy. And when you're working with 7th and 8th graders, especially, you don't want a lot of blood in the classroom. So I was most used to rubber, but when I had taken classes at High Point, when I took my class there, it was a woodblock print, and I really liked the relationship that I had with the woodblock versus the lino or the rubber blocks. And here's another image of color and landscape. But I found my way once again after grad school. I would doing a lot of different things, but found my way back to portraiture. And one common theme for my artwork is sort of those familiarities, people that are really important to me, places that are important, emotions that have really stuck with me, profound moments in my life. But finding my way back to people again. And these are images also. A lot of my work in grad school was about my mother passing. And these are people again who have been important in my life that had passed: my grandmother, a cousin of my husband, and then my grandfather. My practice shifted significantly after I had my first baby. I felt a lot of anxiety and feelings of inadequacy, like I wasn't doing it right, or I didn't know what I was doing. And that is, now I know that that's a pretty common feeling for any new mother. There's a very steep learning curve. But at the time, I thought that it was because my mother wasn't there and I couldn't ask her those questions, that this is why I was feeling this way. And I had a pretty traumatic postpartum experience where I hemorrhaged and had postpartum sepsis. And so that recovery, coupled with the anxiety, led to, I think, some pretty prevalent postpartum anxiety for me. But I thought that was all related to those things. But it turns out that it wasn't. As I was talking to more mothers and new mothers, friends, veterans, mothers, aunts, and my older sister who had children, that this was actually a very common feeling. And it wasn't because I was grieving the loss of my mother. It wasn't because I had postpartum anxiety in this birth experience. It was just a really universal feeling. And so I wanted to reach out and find a way to connect with other mothers, other new mothers, that to sort of have that understanding and to let them know that this is this is real and it's common, but doesn't make it easier. And so I started collecting from friends and friends of friends affirmations that they were looking for from partners or from mothers or people, friends, or maybe their babies if they could talk, right? What were the things that they were wanting to hear? Because that's what I was so hungry for. And so I took a class at the Loft to help piece together these wonderful comments that I had gotten from all these different women. And that's where I wrote the poem Ode to a New Mother. And I'm going to read that to you right now. Oh, how you wish just to sleep, to eat, to bathe in the sweet milk of someone else's breast, to lie in the arms of your own mother, rocking you gently, holding you closely, whispering the sweet words, you are perfect. And oh, how you are, your body created life, this life that comes home every time you hold it, this life that recognizes only the thump of your heartbeat, the smell of your skin, the sound of your voice, this life that, with your perfectly flawed body, was germinated inside your belly, nourished now still by your body, nourished by your tired bones and sore arms. You are enough. And after writing that poem, I sort of had this vision of wanting to create this book where I can have this poem there and these images that capture this postpartum time that are so infrequently captured in this way, right? These candid images of these fleeting moments that are so beautiful and so tender, but also just like, along with all of these anxious, depressed, just really vulnerable times. And then you get all these photos of just smiling mothers, or, trying to get a smiling baby, but that's not really what that time is. So I started asking friends of friends, colleagues, again, reaching out to share photos that felt like and captured that time for them. And so I made a few block prints that showed those images. But as I was working on these, I was wanting to find more control over the subject matter, or how I can show more. This one, it was an image I had received from a neighbor friend who was having an issue with her son breastfeeding and latching. And this is an image of them finger feeding him, which is when you tape a tube to your finger to help slow down the breast milk when they're not attaching to the nipple well, and it helps them build up the suckling muscle and helps encourage breastfeeding versus bottle feeding, which can come a lot faster and easier. And then the child ends up oftentimes preferring the bottle because it's much quicker. But images that I could sort of control how some of those stories that were being shared with me. And so the first interview that I made was with a friend of mine, and she invited me into her home when her baby was 3 days old. And it was a really beautiful experience. And I took a bunch of photos, and I got a chance to just get to know her better, get to know her relationship with her baby better, and get to see how she interacts, how the mother interacts with their baby, and how they show love and how they have this relationship together. And hoping to sort of bring those stories that they share with me, and the stories then that I give them too, just to sort of connect us more, but to show their personalities in and the energies they have in these images. And you can see here, I did the sketch first, and then for this one specifically, the block print looked almost identical, which doesn't always happen. But this next image too, this mother had asked me when I asked her would she be a model, she said she wanted all three of her children, not just her newest baby, because again, that is sort of the reflection of her, right? It's not just about this new baby, it's about the whole family. And being able to show that through the images. And for a photo like that, I just wanted to show you the process that that I'm getting to that point, right? They don't get there immediately. The sketches that I put together, with this one specifically, I didn't have the perfect photo that worked. And so I was combining a lot of different images to create that final work. This is an image of me and my second child, the moment after she was born. I don't even think the umbilical cord was cut at this point, but I wanted to show you the process that I take to get there. So this image that I start with, you'll see here on the left, and then on the right, I take out the colors so I can get a general sense of how the contrast and balance would look. And then once I've simplified it, then I turn it into a drawing, which you see on the left. And if the drawing works well, then I put that onto the wood block, and then I start carving. And I have an up close image of the carving and how that goes. I'm carving away the white, so the black is what is left for anyone who is not familiar with woodcuts. And then the black is what is inked up later, which you see here. I do all my printing at home, and I don't have a press yet. That's, long-term goal. So everything is being hand pressed. So the ink is being rolled onto the wood block, and then the paper goes on top of the wood block, and then I'm rubbing the back of the paper with a tool called the brayer to make the ink press onto the paper, and pulling them that way to see the final image that you see on the right. My current focus on woodblock prints, both the process and the product, is an homage to the difficult and rewarding work of motherhood. Woodblock printing is a laborious medium, and there are no shortcuts when carving. The same goes for pregnancy and motherhood. There are no shortcuts when you're nursing a newborn or trying to get a baby to sleep. And woodblocks are a little bit like taking care of babies, right? Because carving a woodblock is a very physical medium. It's kind of sculptural. It feels, you have to be a part of it and engaged. And that is child rearing too. It can be very forgiving. The wood it's like having a conversation with the wood as you're carving, but also it can feel a little risky. And oftentimes if you make a wrong cut or a mark, or your knife slips, you may have made a mistake that you didn't want to make. It feels like maybe you've ruined it. And oftentimes we feel that way about raising children too. Not mothers alone, any parent or even teacher, but feeling like, did that one thing that I did, is that going to ruin my child? Much like my woodblock, is that going to ruin it? And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. But as I've created this work, I've discovered a diversity of mothering experiences, but I've also found these universal truths among those. I've also encountered a darker, disappointing side of postpartum pregnancy and postpartum care, both in my own personal experiences and then stories and things that I've read and research that I've done. And there's a great lack of support for maternal health, especially in the United States. For a developed country, we have pretty terrible maternal care. And so this book that I'm imagining, that I'm creating out of these images and this poem, I'm also imagining a resource section, a short resource section that gives more support and more information to these women about these things, because there are red flags that I missed in my first postpartum experience of things that could have gotten me help sooner. But especially noting in these resource sections, and just for people looking through this, is that for women of color especially, they are much higher at risk for complications with pregnancy and death, 3 to 4 times more likely, which is just terrible. So as I'm creating these images in this book, I've been reaching out to 2 doctors that are helping me piece together this resource section. And then I plan to create a few more wood blocks as I'm printing this. I also would love to make a broadside of the poem. But all of this is to say that the wood block, the imagery part of this is falling into place, but finding the book form for my project is still in the works and in the making. And it's been so wonderful to be a part of this community, to get feedback, because this project is so collaborative and it is about being within this community of mothers and of families. MCBA has been a really wonderful fit for this project because MCBA is also a collaborative community-based place. So these final images are the last of my pieces, and that is it. And this is the piece that I'm working on currently. So I'm going to stop sharing, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah. That was great. All three of you have such important stories and topics in your work. We will now have a short Q&A period. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. I think I'll start with a question for the three of you that you can answer in turn. My question is, you guys have really undergone such a period of learning in this first part of your mentorship at MCBA. What skills or techniques have you been especially excited about or connected with, and how do you maybe see those influencing your practice, either with the projects you're currently working on or even beyond your mentorship year? Do you want to go first, Leah, since I think you're on screen?
Sure, that sounds great. Well, the first class I took was pressure printing, and I loved that. I don't know, that actually might show up in the broadside that I make, because that seems like a really great place to influence that, right? That impression of the things that I'm working on really has an impression on us. And then just about thinking about it, my next project, even after my time with MCBA, is about like how motherhood or having babies sort of changes the body. And so thinking about how pressure printing kind of feels a little bit like that. But in addition, thinking about the body and sort of the changes that happen with that, the bookbinding piece has been really interesting to me, and thinking about the outside of my work, and then how I can use the bookbinding to sort of parallel the body, and thinking about how the binding piece specifically, and thinking about like C-sections and the binding, or any sort of like suturing, that sort of thing, and how to parallel some of that. So that's what I've been interested in thinking about as I've been learning.
That's a really interesting connection with the binding and your topic you're exploring. I would not have thought of that necessarily.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Suriya, you want to go next?
Sure. I would say that I was like most influenced by the like bookbinding class I took. I think that, again, like as Leah mentioned, like that act of like suturing and as a way of like bringing together this like coherent object is something that like I'm interested in my work of like suturing different like narratives together. And so I think that like that class kind of, again, like also demystified these like objects that I'm surrounded by every day. And I would say also like the European paper making class really taught me to appreciate the paper I take for granted every day. And I've been kind of practicing or kind of trying to do tests with finding ways again to like make paper more sculptural. So like I did a lot of tests where I was kind of cutting up the like shapes of like my hand or objects, and then like pressing that like paper pulp on it and kind of creating these like sort of like engravings in the paper. And so that's something I'm interested in doing and expanding upon within my project. But yeah, there's still a lot left of the mentorship, and I'm excited to see like what other classes I can take that will just give like a new entry point into the work I've been making.
Great, thank you. And D'Angelo.
Yeah, I really appreciated taking all the classes. I feel like I learned something from each class, like paper making as well, you know, just really appreciating the labor that goes behind it. But what I'm really connected to is letterpress, but more so with the polymer plates. And because I really like how those words can be pressed in a paper and like those indents. I just really appreciate that as well. But also like thinking about bookmaking, and then also like making boxes, just because I really appreciate like photography. And I really appreciate like looking at photo books as well. And figuring out different ways to like sequence and think about photographs. So yeah, I would say I think all of those things really.
Great. Well, I am really excited to see where you guys go with the rest of your mentorship and what you make and all of the things that are yet to explore within your work. If there are no further questions, I think we'll go ahead and end. I just want to say thank you again to everyone for joining us, to the three artists for really sharing such personal work and stories and providing that insight into your practice. And I want to invite everyone to their exhibition, which will be in the fall. It will open in November and run through January. So I hope to see everyone at the opening, hopefully in November, to celebrate these three artists. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and please
Thank you.
stay connected with MCBA, everyone. Thank you all. Good night.